Have you folks noticed that when we gather sometimes with others within a Jewish community, people will talk about a Shechianu moment. Sometimes we have these Shechianu moments. So what's Shechianu? Shechianu, it's a blessing. And it's a blessing we say, Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh, right? Right, of course, right. So Shechianu is this blessing we say when something amazing happens, because it basically says, we thank you, God, we think you're super cool, and you have sustained us and gave us the ability to reach this day, this season, this moment. And in Jewish tradition, we say Shechianu for certain things. We say it on the first night of a holy day. We say it when we wear a new garment. It's not just when somebody who becomes B'nai Mitzvah, they put on a talit, and after they say a blessing, then there's always that extra blessing, Shechianu. Thanks God for supporting us. It's not just only for those really special times. It's whenever you have that first experience, that first moment, including putting on new clothes. Not if it's leather, by the way. That's good for Jewish Trivial Pursuit. Not if it's leather, because of course leather comes from an animal and we should be more sensitive to it. It's not a Shechianu moment, but a lot of people today will say whenever something really glorious happens, we have a Shechianu moment. We have a sense of appreciation. I know I have some Shechianu moments, something that kind of deep down I just am filled with gratitude, or maybe awe, having a sense of something really beautiful. And as a rabbi, I've had some too. Whenever I take people to Israel for the first time and they get to see Jerusalem from a mountaintop going into the city, that's a Shechianu moment for a lot of folks. And then I make them say Shechianu. Another times is when young Israeli counselors who have already finished their army service, so they're like in their 20s and they're at camp with us, or maybe they come to a synagogue for something, and they haven't had a chance to become bat mitzvah, something that happens for our daughters within the community. Because in Israel, it's not that same kind of level egalitarian playing field. A lot of those who identify as women or girls aren't given the opportunity. And so in their 20s, we help them to read some Torah, because their Hebrew's pretty good at this point. And they chant or read from the Torah for the very first time after being denied. And that for them is like such a clear Shechianu moment. It's amazing to be a witness to that. But we also have another kind of Hebrew, destroying the Hebrew language moment. It's not just Shechianu moments, there's also a Lech Lecha moment. Lech Lecha is this Torah portion. This one is a little trickier, because you need to know a little context. In the very beginning, we meet this fella, Abram, and his wife, Sarai. Eventually, their names are changed to Abraham and Sarah. But for now, it's still Abram, Avram, and Sarai. And we meet them really for the very first time, and we see that they are told Lech Lecha, which is usually translated as go forth. Go forth, go. Lech is the imperative, the command form, in case you forgot your English. Well, you could talk to Richard. Lech is the imperative of go, to go. Lecha means to you. I know the idiom, the expression is to go forth, but it's really more than that. It's about go to you, go to you, go for you. All of these are possible. And these are all ideas that if you're going to go on a journey like Abram and Sarai do back a few thousand years ago, you kind of have to look inward a little bit. You have to kind of look a little bit deep down, because you're not just walking, you're not just wandering, you're journeying. That has another kind of purpose. That has a different kind of sensitivity. That means that the encounters that we have another level of intention and perhaps another feeling of being sacred. So a lot of us will talk about Lech Lecha moments. When have I gone on a part of my journey? When have I had a little stop and took note of something that has been transformational, that has been so significant that somehow, emotionally, spiritually, I marked it? They could be those low points. It could be those hard times, a loss, a diagnosis. It could be another time when I get to witness most incredible joy for my kid graduating college. I might have seen something, a new energy within a congregation, but whatever it is, a lot of us call these things Lech Lecha moments because we think about Abraham, and Sarai, Sarah. We think of their journey because put yourselves in their mindset for a moment. Think about what they needed to do leaving Mesopotamia and not having any GPS. None of these fancy watches that will tell you if you're going in the wrong direction. They journey because God says so. And they go. They go on this journey with only a promise from God that there's going to be blessings in store. Blessing for them, blessing for their descendants, blessings for their allies, blessings for their friends. Talk about trust. Talk about a sense of being grounded. I bet, by the way, they probably had some moments of doubt. I wonder if they kind of second-guessed themselves. I would. It was hard enough to move to Colorado. I still don't know where Colorado is on a map. I'm from New York. None of us do. But there's something in those grand Lech Lecha moments that are worth marking, that are worth acknowledging. I know one when I was ordained, finally becoming a rabbi after 5 years of graduate school, after that time in seminary, and during seminary having our first couple of children, babies at home, and being amazed that I even reached it in the first place. And Rabbi Norman Cohen takes his hands and put them on my head, because that's what happens in an ordination, just like blessing a child or a goat. You take their hands, you put them on their head, and you exchange this blessing, and poof, you're a rabbi. That was a Lech Lecha moment. I have another one. I remember Sam Berger. Sam Berger was in my first congregation in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And Sam was this lovely guy, and he was then in his 80s. He's passed on since. And Sam would talk with me and tell me stories, and he was one of those kind of older Jewish guys who always had a joke, and he always had a story. At one point, he was vice president of Columbia Records. Does everybody know what a record is? Do you have any? Anyway, he was just a lovely fellow. But I realized at some point he was upset with me. And I went to him and I asked, did I do something wrong? And he told me that after he got his double knee replacement surgery, I only went to the hospital once to see him, and he was having a really hard time. I was the assistant rabbi. There was a senior rabbi, and everybody talks about senior rabbis and assistant rabbis. I didn't recognize that he saw me as his rabbi. And I didn't show up with him because as the assistant rabbi, I was in charge of the youth program, and I had an engagement program I was launching, and all of these programs, and I forgot the person. And he told me that not in a mean way, but in a way that I would have a lech lecha moment, a journeying moment of growth and figuring out, am I looking for the position, or are we here to help create encounters and make a difference in people's lives? I think we learn lots of these things from Jewish life, from synagogues, from learning programs, experiences, or just being together. And the reason why I share this, I think, is because it's been a long time since we've gathered in our sanctuary. And there's a lot of us, certainly among clergy, who are wondering, are we going to make this? Are we going to get through all of this? Are we going to be able to gather people together in person or online or in any other way where it's going to be real? And then I thought to myself this afternoon, we need these lech lecha moments, moments of inspiration and comfort, moments where we're going to be challenged to think differently, and moments where we get to grow up, no matter how old we are. I don't think we're done creating as a congregation, as a synagogue, or even in institutions, which I know people in Boulder County feel really connected to, institutions. I don't think this place is done in helping people see what lech lecha moments are, or to teach them that we can say a shechianu for anything, even if it's not prescribed by the rabbis of old. I think we can play a role. And we have. Sometimes I have to remind myself about that. Because coming into this tent, as much as I like that other tent, this is my real tent. It's designed to be like a tent. We talk about having a tent that's open, and we're trying really hard to live that out in a really true and honest way so that folks have those lech lecha moments. But what the tent isn't giving me is behind me. It's the Ner Tamid. It's this ark that started off in that room when that was the sanctuary. When our founders built this building and this room wasn't here yet, sort of like the mountains is envisioned in the 1960s, that ark was in that space. And when they built it, they had lech lecha moments. And when we expanded, we had lech lecha moments. And this Ner Tamid right behind me, the Ner Tamid, we often call it the eternal light, the light that's always on, the continual light. We know in Jewish tradition the Ner Tamid represents God's presence because we never turn it off. But I think it's even more than God's presence. It's also the vitality of our community. And there are people who have really worked hard to make sure we learn about marking our shechianu moments and lech lecha moments in our lives, and to keep that light burning. That light. It reminds us that we're really committed, many of us, committed to sustain a community, to ensure that Congregation Har Hashem can continue to be a light, to be a light in other people's lives, even those beyond our congregation, out into the community, beyond those who are Jewish. We continue to be a light. I think that's amazing. I think that's kind of awesome. I think it ain't easy, but it is good. So one little Lech Lecha moment, we've said to our congregation, and some came in person and some I know are going to be online, is that in order to mark our place, we really need to say thank you. And we've tried to do it for our leaders and to our volunteers and to certain donors, to be sure, but there's another new group of people that we have been nurturing, who have actually been nurturing me. We have had all of these folks who have said they're going to be legacy donors. Now, this isn't about fundraising tonight. This is about a Lech Lecha moment, recognizing that acts of tzedakah can change the reality of people's lives. And there are so many people who have said, now over 100. And Gary, who's over there, Gary Margolis, along with other volunteers who have been trying to really bring a group from 15 or 20 just a few years ago to over 100, who have said that as part of their estate plans, they're going to leave special gifts to the synagogue. And this year we've received some really special gifts from special people. Whether it was $500 or $100,000. The point of it all is there are people who are saying that they want to keep that light going in us. That they want to invest in a community that's going to help encourage how to mark our Lech Lecha journeys. So, if you have been one of those legacy donors, I'm going to ask you to stand for a moment, just a brief moment. Even if you're at home watching online, I'm going to ask you to stand even in front of your computers. So, we have some here. I want to share this with you. God spoke to Moses saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo, tikhu et trumati," from every person who is moved by generosity of the heart, accept gifts for me, it says in the book of Exodus. We celebrate this legacy of yidvenu libo, those moved by generosity and free will, to build and establish our very first holy communal structure, the Mishkan, the tabernacle of old. They gave us gold and silver and copper, purple and crimson yarns, fine woods and wools, and items from near and far. And today, you folks, you volunteer your time and resources to create the community we cherish because it helps our Lech Lecha journeys. We call you Nidivim, those who are generous. We know you as Nidivim, those who are kind. We look to you, Nidivim, those who volunteer. And we respect you, Nidvei Amo, those who are leaders among our people. And we offer thanks to you who sustain us, just as you give thanks to God, declaring from the words of our Psalms, with a generous gift I make an offering to you, O God. I give thanks to your name. Baruch atah Adonai, noten tormim nedivim. Blessed is God, the giver of generous givers. You may be seated. I'm going to ask you, just yourselves, in a quiet moment, what has been a Shehechianu moment, one of awe and gratitude? A time appropriate to give thanks. And I'm going to ask you, what is a Lech Lecha moment? One that has been part of your growth, one that has helped you, sorry, my New York came out, helped you become. To become. For all of you, for all of us, may your journey be rich and meaningful as Abraham and Sarah's and all those who came after them. May your journeys be sweet and gentle, because life is complicated. May your travels and sojourns be one where you can make a difference in other people's lives, helping them with their Shehechianu and Lech Lecha moments. May your journeys be safe from harm, from illness, from hardship. Let's all say amen.